All right, so we watched Phantom Menace, first time watching it last night.
Yes.
Describe what you thought of that movie in one sentence.
It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a couple of TV shows.
There you go. Find out why next. Hi, this is Alec. I'm Alec the Awesome, and I'm here with my friend
I'm Joe.
Joe.
Nice to see y'all.
Yeah, he has your own. You want to shout out your own channel first?
You can put it in the description. It's just my name.
Fair enough. Easy enough to find. I'll put it in the description. And we watched Phantom Menace last night for the first time. So what's your experience with Star Wars in the past? Like, why did you want to watch the prequels for the first time?
Right. So we watched the original trilogy, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. Wow. But
Yeah.
and I'd seen all the Star Wars figures, and I knew a lot about the original trilogy, but I pretty much had no exposure to any Star Wars outside of that original trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And what did you think? Like, what were your expectations going into this movie? I mean, largely from, I'm sure the fan backlash. I'm sure, like, a lot of the fan reception had something to do with it. But, like, I guess, what were you expecting when we sat down to watch episode 1?
Yeah, well, I knew that I knew that the prequels were memed a lot. I knew that there was some negative fan reception, and I knew of some characters. Like, I knew who Jar Jar Binks was, I knew who Darth Maul was, but I didn't know any of the story or anything like that going into it.
Sure. So then, just to leapfrog off of that, this is something, obviously, I guess let's talk about me now. I first watched Star Wars as a kid. Like, I genuinely don't remember the first time I ever watched this new trilogy. I mean, the original trilogy. I remember the sequels. That has their own problems. That's another video. Maybe one day we'll do I showed my friend the sequel trilogy, and we'll see how that turns out.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. But, so, in terms of my expectations for this movie, that was like, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago at this point. Like, I'd have to take a TARDIS to figure that out. But I guess, what did you think of, like, the plot of this movie, like, compared to the movie? Compared to the originals? Because the originals are so much of, like, an action, like, Western. Like, my dad calls them, like, a space Western. And this one is very not. Did you find that, like, jarring at all? Like, just how different this movie was compared to the originals?
I wouldn't say jarring, but there were definitely differences, right? Like, I'm fine with the movie not having a ton of action. Like, sure. I actually was kind of okay that this had a lot of dialogue and a lot of world building. And I actually think that compared to the original trilogy, I think that this is much better as just one solid movie. Like, I feel like even episode 4, it doesn't do much all by itself. Like, 4 without 5 and 6 is kind of just whatever. And this by itself still feels like a pretty full story, at least to some extent. Which, I don't know if that's what most people feel, but that's how I feel.
Interesting. It is pretty interesting because, as you'll see, I feel like episode 2 is not that way. Like, episode 2 and episode 3, they kind of, like, I don't know. It's interesting watching this movie back, having seen Clone Wars and sort of knowing where the story is going. Episode 1 feels, in a lot of ways, like setup for what's to come in the next 2 movies. So it's very interesting. Like, I don't think you will have the same takeaway when we watch, I don't know, a couple months, I guess, episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Sure.
But that's very interesting. Do you hate, I guess, like, all the politicalness of it? I mean, that's something that I feel like got some hate on with it, is that there was a lot of, like, Senate hearings and, like, Palpatine's main goal is to get Padme to sign a form. Like, did you find that really jarring, I guess, compared to... Is this kind of the same question I already asked? I think so.
Well, no, I enjoyed how much it was kind of focused on the politics of it.
Okay.
Because not only was it kind of world building, but I also I like kind of foreign policy and that kind of stuff in real life. So this felt a little bit more tailored towards, like, what I enjoy rather than, like, the nonstop action that the original trilogy had a lot of.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting watching this back now. And I said this last night when we watched it. I sort of take this movie very differently now, having watching it as an adult versus watching it as a kid. Because watching it as a kid, I had no clue, zero clue, like what all the politics and stuff they were talking about. So it's really interesting, again, knowing the full story from, knowing what's to come with the episodes and watching it back now. Like, I'm much more able to appreciate that, and I think that's part of the reason why, again, I'm not really going to talk about the sequels as much here, but why I think the prequels are getting a lot more love now after the sequels come out. It's because they had more of a structured plan. Like, you can talk about the execution of the plan all you want, and believe me, I'm sure we will at some point. But they at least had a plan, and George Lucas had a vision with these, which it's hard to really say that for the sequels, but I do really, as jarring as it is, going from like episode 6 to this, I do really appreciate the story that George Lucas was trying to tell with these.
This feels like a movie that can have different enjoyment levels for both like a kid and an adult. Like they can look at it completely differently, kind of like a traditional Disney animated movie or something like that in that way.
Yeah, and it's funny just because Star Wars has evolved for me so much as someone who was really into it as a kid. Like, someone who was really into it as a kid is all about like the lightsaber fights and the gun fights and just sort of all the action set pieces. And now as an adult, it's like I really love like all the lore, and I really love like all the different layers. It's like ogres.
Ogres have layers.
But yeah, so that's something I really can appreciate more now about Star Wars as an adult. But Star Wars, I don't know. So it's weird. Like, this movie doesn't really feel like it's made for kids in that weird way. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. The dichotomy between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I get, like, for somebody as a kid when this came out, they had watched 4, 5, 6. It's pretty clear where this is going as far as, like, how Anakin turns into Darth Vader. That's pretty clearly what's going to happen in episodes 2 and 3. But I guess kids maybe wouldn't get that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Perfect segue. What did you think about Anakin in this movie? This is your first time you really see him out of the suit. What did you think? And I guess, what did you expect from him going into this movie? I'm sure you thought Vader was going to show up at some point.
I really didn't have any expectations at all going into this. I actually didn't know that Anakin was in episode 1 going into this at all. But I really think he was one of the highlights of the movie. I think that maybe even though the movie slowed down a lot when he showed up and they were on Tatooine and everything like that, that was kind of maybe the worst part of the movie. But him as a character, I thought, was actually very interesting, and I kind of think there was a lot of depth in there. There
is, and I want to shout out for the millionth time, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I love how they handle Anakin in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But that show, it sort of really changed how I view a lot of this now. Not just because I know where it's going, but I'm able to more appreciate Anakin's character. What did you think of him as the Jesus Messiah, and as being the chosen one? Like, what did you think of that, knowing what he's going to become as Darth Vader?
It does add some color to the original trilogy, right? Like, it kind of makes the stakes retroactively be even raised more in those movies, which is cool. And I can see how this all ties into Luke and everything like that. Like, it's good world building, and if I was somebody just watching this without having watched the original trilogy, I don't think it would bother me. It kind of just is like a cool, mysterious thing that maybe is going to get answered in episodes 2 and 3 a little bit more. Sure.
And sort of knowing the full story, I really am able to more appreciate, and this really goes back into the politics that we were just talking about in a previous segment. Anakin being the chosen one just makes so much sense. And I really, well, first off, I didn't really think we needed the virgin mother thing, but whatever, it's here, I guess.
Parallels are clear.
He's Space Jesus. Anakin is Space Jesus. And I think for someone, I guess who's a kid who doesn't really fully understand that, like, it may be weird to say that, like, Darth Vader, the person who's killed so many people in the original movies, is the chosen one, but really, when you think about the story as a whole, it makes perfect sense, and it's something that's really set up here. As we see in this movie, the Jedi are very corrupt, just like, well, the Republic is very corrupt. You don't really see the Jedi Council that much in this, but the Jedi Council are an extension of that, and so Anakin helps lead to their downfall, as you'll see in the next 2 movies, and so in terms of help bringing balance to the Force, the Jedi are pretty cocky and thinking that will lead to the extermination of the Sith.
Right.
But it leads to their own downfall, and then of course you saw what happens in Episode 6, where then he leads to the extinction of the Sith, where really it's Luke and a handful of other Jedi left that can build a better Jedi Order. So that plot makes sense, and it also really ties back into something we talked about last night after the movie, which is that light and dark, like, Jedi cannot exist without the Sith, and the Sith cannot exist without the Jedi, and that's something I think you will see with Anakin more in the next two movies and with Clone Wars, is that Vader was always there. Like, Darth Vader isn't something that just appeared out of nowhere for Anakin. Like, Anakin is very much a part of Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is very much part of Anakin. And when you see the whole story as a whole, that's something you can really understand and appreciate.
And they kind of foreshadow that too, with them saying that hate leads to all of those problems, and you can kind of see the hate Anakin from being a slave and how his mother was treated and everything like that. Like, I can see how that would lead to Darth Vader. Yeah,
you'll see more in Episode 2. It's funny that you say that. Let's talk about one of the other characters who had a big role in this movie and who was big in the original. What did you think about Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan Kenobi in this movie?
Very forgettable character, to tell you the truth. Like, I think it was cool that Obi-Wan was there, because you could see how, Darth Vader trained under him, essentially, and that's how this movie ends.
Yep.
And that's cool world building, but as far as what he did in the movie, I feel like he was pretty much a non-presence.
I understand what you're saying, fans. Like I said, I'm putting this channel in the description if you want to hate on him. I know that's not the most popular take, but I understand what you're saying, and it's really because of, Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon is just so amazing, and he really has the spotlight.
It stole the spotlight, yeah. It stole everything.
Right, exactly. And you'll really see more of Ewan McGregor in Episodes 2 and 3, where he does have more of a highlighted role. Although it's interesting. Obi-Wan's so very interesting. I mean, going back to Clone Wars, Obi-Wan feels like he's there and then he's not. In that show, he sort of has a big presence early on in the show, and then as it keeps going, it kind of fades. And so, I don't know. Obi-Wan's... It's interesting. Of course, it's kind of important that he's here, because in Episode 4, it's obviously important that Obi-Wan... It's obviously mentioned that Obi-Wan and Vader have a huge connection, so it would kind of be missing if it wasn't in these movies. But I kind of agree with you. Liam Neeson really just steals the spotlight completely from Obi-Wan here.
What an excellent character. It's a shame that we're not going to see any more of him. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the way you're acting, maybe we will see more of him.
I don't really want to spoil the shows for you, but I will say this. Liam Neeson does not appear in any of these movies again.
Okay.
But that does not mean he has not reprised his role as Qui-Gon Jinn. Okay. That's all. I don't really want to give away any more than that.
We're going down a dangerous path of spoilers here, aren't we?
Yeah, I guess for Star Wars: The Clone Wars, I guess so. I guess another transition. So Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn, he obviously rejects the Jedi Council in a lot of ways, and he sort of does things his own way. What did you think about the Jedi Council? We only got a couple scenes of them, but what did you think of the Jedi Council from what little we got of them?
They don't seem like they do all that much, honestly. I'm not entirely sure.
You got the point. Ding, 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 ding.
The one really main question I had is, what is Yoda's role in the Jedi Council? He's there, he's a part of it, but it's never really explained what his specific role is or what exactly he's doing.
They're just kind of in charge of the Jedi. They're like the head council for the Jedi, and thus, because they helped found the Republic, they're in a lot of ways a governing force for the Republic also. But, like you just kind of said, they just kind of get washed up in sort of bureaucratic incompetence and saving face and everything like that. So I can't believe you just perfectly hit the nail on the head with that one statement.
It was interesting though. It was cool to see the behind the scenes, right? It's cool.
Yeah. You'll see more of them, obviously. Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu, he comes up a lot more in the next two movies.
I was surprised to see him. I didn't know he was in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a great story with that, actually. I'll have to insert the clip now, but he apparently asked George to, be in Star Wars. and like even if it was like just like a supporting role, and then he just made him a member of the Jedi Council.
Interesting. Maybe George hates him in that case.
I don't know. Who's to say?
When I first got that job, I didn't know what I was going to do. When I said I wanted to be in Star Wars, George invited me over to the ranch. I got over and told him, look, I just want to be in the movie. I'll be a stormtrooper. You can put me in one of those white suits. Let me run across the screen. Nobody needs to know that but me. And I'll be happy. And he's like, no, we'll figure out something. So I got over here, and he made me a Jedi. And I was pleased. I did some scenes with Yoda, and I did some scenes with Liam, and everything was great.
So now we'll get into a little more of the meat and potatoes of this all. What did you think of Ian McDiarmid reprising his role as Sheev Palpatine in this movie?
It was cool. Like, Palpatine's a very mysterious figure in this movie. Like, obviously, you kind of can tell where he ends up going in 4, 5, and 6, and that's cool, but I feel like he doesn't have too much to play in this movie because he's, working behind the shadows to get what he wants,
right.
And he's also kind of in the shadows in this movie. He's not really the focus of what's going on.
Yeah, and it's funny. That's kind of like, thinking about this, I don't want to give too much away, but this... Well, first off, I said this in my other Star Wars videos, and I'll continue to say it. As much as we love, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker and Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, Ian McDiarmid as Emperor Palpatine is one of the best castings in Star Wars ever. He is so unbelievable, and the fact that he's able to go from, like, the evil, completely evil Emperor in Episode 6 to, the sort of senator who's sort of intertwining everything and moving everything like chess pieces, and it's totally believable as the same character.
It is believable. It's manipulative even to the viewer.
Right.
You kind of buy into what he's saying.
Exactly. It's so great. And he also really exposes a lot of the corruption in the Senate. We're talking about the politics, because he doesn't... something you really learn to appreciate watching this now as an adult talking about the politics is he uses everything that's there, right? Like, his whole plan in this movie is to expose the corruption in the Senate to become chancellor. But the corruption was already there. Like, it's not like he infested it.
Right. He's exposing it by taking advantage of it.
Right, exactly. He's like, oh, the Republic's a problem. I'm going to take advantage of this and get my own power.
I'll become the problem.
Exactly. And it's actually, again, it really just solidifies, I don't want to give too much away what happens in Episode 2 and 3, but it really solidifies to me that this movie is really just setting up what happens in Episodes 2 and 3, because in a lot of ways, what he does in those two movies is really just a bigger... It's like what he does in Episode 1 on a bigger scale. So without giving too much away, it's really interesting. But Palpatine is so amazing. I just love him.
This really makes me want to watch 2 and 3 because I can tell where it's going. Like I said, this is a great movie on its own in better way than 4, 5, and 6 all were on their own. But it leaves you kind of wanting to bridge that gap in between what happens in 1 and what happens, from 4 on.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll get there. About the Grand Lord of the Sith, what did you think about his apprentice in this movie, Darth Maul?
Darth Maul was pretty cool. I wonder what Darth actually means, because obviously Darth has some kind of connection with evil and Siths and everything like that. So
it's sort of just to give you some insight. It's just like a Sith title.
Okay.
It's basically the equivalent of like Jedi Master, right? Like it's like Jedi Master Yoda. It's just like Darth.
Okay, that makes sense. But what's essentially like a non-verbal character that really doesn't talk, it says Darth had such a powerful presence in the film still, I'd say.
Yeah. And of course, now we're going to ask the real questions that I'm sure all you guys want to know. Do you think he's dead?
I'm always wary of that if they never show him actually die. Like, they never showed like his body getting burnt or anything like that. You gotta be a little bit wary of it. And you asking that makes me more wary.
Very fair question. All I'm going to say is he does not appear in these movies again. We will not see Darth Maul when we watch Episode 2, and we will not see him when we watch Episode 3.
Okay.
That is the only answer I'm going to give to you. But what did you think of that fight at the end of this movie involving Darth Maul?
Yeah, lightsaber fights to me are cool. They're not my favorite part about Star Wars. My favorite part about Star Wars is kind of like the world building and everything that goes into what makes the universe what it is.
Sure.
But it was cool to watch. I'm glad that they really didn't overdo it, and that was the only real lightsaber fight that they had.
Episode 3, looking at you.
Oh no. But it was cool. Like the cinematography is very cool, and the way they move, and it's almost like a dance. Like it's cool to watch.
It's cool. I wish Episode 5's fight with Luke and Vader could combine the emotion of that fight with the sort of pristine and the finish of Episode 1. Because I think purely in terms of like a choreography and the music and a visual spectacle, this is my favorite fight in Star Wars, at least in the movies. Obviously, when you get into the other shows and stuff, it becomes more debatable. But and really, I know it's sort of weird. This is an Episode 1 review, and obviously I'm talking so much about Episodes 2 and 3. But to me, some of the big fights in that, they just have some pacing issues that this one doesn't. It's just so crisp just from start to finish, and Duel of the Fates is just so unbelievable. John Williams, where would Star Wars be without John Williams? I really couldn't tell you. But it's just so amazing, and I love too that just that little pause at the end, just to increase suspense more, where Qui-Gon and Darth Maul are stuck between the laser doors. They can't fight each other.
That's the best part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so good, and then the music cuts out right before Qui-Gon is stabbed. Oh, chef kiss. It's so good. Finally, we avoided the elephant in the room, I think, only for so long. Jar Jar Binks is a character that exists. What did you think of Jar Jar Binks?
I think he comes close to ruining the whole movie. I don't know if he quite ruins it, but he comes very close. Because not only is him just existing and kind of being awful ruin the scenes that he's in, but even when there's like a scene that he's not in, it's the threat of he could come up and fuck this up. And that's really just always in the back of your mind when you're watching this movie, that he could come kind of just ruin things at any moment.
Yeah, it's funny. Last night when we were watching, and Anakin had that very emotional scene where he's saying goodbye to his mom. Something you said to me that I think really sums up Jar Jar Binks in this movie is like, thank God Jar Jar didn't come in and like ruin this very emotional moment. And it's like, it's so true. Like, why is Jar Jar Binks so much in this movie?
It takes away from the emotion to have him just constantly be fucking shit up. Like, I expected him to just end up tripping, and I don't know. I expected him to show up somehow and just ruin what was a powerful moment, and it just made it less powerful just because of his existence in the movie.
And it's like, I think a big example of that happening actually is when Anakin takes him back to his house for the first time, and they're having that dinner, and Qui-Gon's talking with Anakin's mom, and Qui-Gon, Anakin, and Padme are talking about how slavery, like, slavery is illegal, like why is that going on here, and the mom saying, oh, the Republic doesn't care about us, they don't do anything about it here, and then like while this is going on, you have Jar Jar like using his tongue to get an apple, and it just like completely interrupts everything. He's just
yeah, I wanted him to just go away at any moment in the movie. Unfortunately, he didn't die.
Yeah, no, he did not. Although actually I am very, very curious about. So there's a theory that goes around Star Wars lore, Star Wars fandom. What do you think? There's this theory that Jar Jar was originally made by George Lucas to be a Sith Lord, and that he was like super clumsy, as a disguise, and that never actually came to fruition because of all the backlash Jar Jar got from Episode 1. He was so toned down. What would have happened? Like, if we got to Episode 3 and there was so much Jar Jar and then he revealed himself to be a Sith Lord, would that just be, like, the worst thing that ever happened to you, ever?
It makes no sense. It makes literally no sense.
It's so good. I'm just glad it didn't happen. I'm glad we got less Jar Jar in the next two movies, that's for sure, because he really did almost ruin this movie.
Yeah.
So bad. Okay, so talking about another controversial thing that came out from this movie, what did you think of the midichlorians? That whole thing that came out of this movie.
I'm surprised it's controversial. Like, to me, it doesn't really seem that crazy. It kind of makes sense. It's fine. I don't really care too much one way or the other. It's just something that happened, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's funny thinking about it. So the one complaint, again, I've been in Star Wars fandom for a long, long, long time, so I could not tell you where I heard this from, but one of the complaints I heard from the midichlorians was that it sort of ruined everyone's, like, it ruined the idea that anyone could be a Jedi, and I, just thinking about it more, especially in preparation for this, that idea was never there.
No.
Like, even in the original trilogy, there was always a sense of Force potential.
And being strong with you, and yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, could you imagine, the scene I think of the most is that scene from the end of Empire Strikes Back, where Luke calls out through the Force to Leia. And Leia had never used the Force, ever. She was, barely aware that it existed.
Right.
And yet she was still able to feel, hey, turn around. And it's because, her father was Anakin Skywalker. And so she was inherently very strong with the Force. And, could you imagine if Luke used that Force call to Han? At the end of that movie, you know what would have happened? He would have died. He would have fell off and died. And then there wouldn't be an episode 6. So, the idea of Force potential, it's always kind of been there, and it's just kind of putting it to words. Although, the one thing I will say with the controversy is, you don't really hear the word midichlorians that much after this movie. The idea of Force potential in Star Wars is still there. It's still very present. I think of Ahsoka, the show, which you don't even know who the hell that is yet. She's from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, but there's this scene where one person is being trained, and she's really good with the sword, but she doesn't really, she's not really good at the actual Force side of it. And it's she doesn't really have, she doesn't really have the Force potential. I'm that's sort of what they use instead of midichlorians, but the idea has always been there from Star Wars, so it feels kind of stupid that people got annoyed by that.
It really was just okay, it happened, let's move on. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Okay, so one last character we actually haven't really touched on. I'm surprised I haven't brought it up sooner. What do you think about Natalie Portman as her role as Padme in this movie? Also, I am curious, because I almost said this to you last night, and I didn't want to do it to ruin it. Did you ever figure out that she was actually the queen as the handmaiden? Because it felt kind of, I was I thought about saying she's the queen, right? But I didn't want to give that away to you at all.
It was definitely foreshadowed throughout the movie. It was a cool reveal when they ended up revealing it, though. I think she did a great job, as an actress in the film. I wouldn't say it was the most powerful character. It didn't really resonate with me as much as other characters did. But the use of her in the movie I thought was very good, and I thought that she did a great job. Yeah,
she sort of feels like a side character in this one in a way that she doesn't in episodes 2 and 3. But yeah, I mean, she's very, very important for Star Wars, so she'll be back.
I'd heard of Padme prior to this movie. One of the few characters I heard about.
Yeah, it feels like she's really, again, this movie just in a lot of ways feels like it's here to set up episodes 2 and 3. It sets up, sort of what's to come with her and what's to come with her and Anakin. What do you think of Anakin calling her an angel?
Strange.
So they met. Yeah. At least they're both, I think they're 5 years apart, but they're both, I don't know, teenagers. I don't know, young adults, whatever. I don't know, it's weird. What did you think of the overall plot? So now obviously we'll talk about a lot of the characters and talk about a lot of individual instances. What do you think about, first off, I guess where this movie starts with the Republic? I guess let's start there. What do you think about establishing, this Republic, and how do you think it's sort of going to lead to becoming the Empire?
The beginning of the movie, and honestly most of the movie, didn't really feel like Star Wars. It felt like I was watching some kind of spin-off or something completely different. It didn't quite have that feel of the original trilogy from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess what do you think about the overall plot? Because it is so different from Star Wars, I'm sure it's sort of from the original Star Wars. It sort of really caught you off guard. What do you think about what really actually physically happened? Obviously we talked about a lot of the characters, but
yeah, after sleeping on it, I'm overall more positive on the plot than I was last night.
Sure.
I am really just curious where this is going to go. Because I think this movie, like I said, it stands well by itself. I think that they did a lot of world building. Here are these characters that you're going to be seeing a lot in presumably the next 2 films. So I just want to know what's going to happen now.
Fair enough.
The plot itself, it wasn't that much actually happened.
Yeah. For sure. No, not that much actually happened, especially with Tatooine. I mean, this is about what I was about to get into, but I found myself really enjoying this movie, really from the beginning. That scene. First off, I just have so much nostalgia for that opening scene because of Lego Star Wars, the complete saga. That's where you start off in the game, and I replayed that level so much. But that opening scene with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on the ship, it's so cool, it's so great, and I really loved it. And then, so I was finding myself really, really enjoying the movie, and Jar Jar's fine. I don't know, Jar Jar's introduction, I was like, okay, at least he, we didn't go to whatever the city was called that long, but really, once they got to Tatooine, why did this movie slow to a crawl? Like, I really don't understand. It felt like so much happened in, like, the opening, 15 minutes, half hour, and then it's just, like, nothing happened for, like, the next 45 minutes, it felt like.
I presume it's because they wanted to build up Anakin as being special by winning the race and kind of, like, his little rise to becoming, someone that the Jedi are interested in and everything like that. But I feel like it was just way too much of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that the race scene itself was too long. I think the whole Tatooine sequence was too long. I think that they probably could have cut it in half, and that would have been perfectly fine.
I agree. I also think part of the reason why they kept them Tatooine is because it's Tatooine. Like, that's something that some of these movies have a problem with, is sort of introducing everybody. Why does Greedo have to be one of Anakin's old friends? He doesn't need to be here. You don't need that scene of Jabba the Hutt here. It feels like they focus so much on Tatooine because that's where Luke grows up, and that's where Star Wars originally started, right? Star Wars originally started on Tatooine. So I feel like, we have to explore Tatooine so much now, and it feels weird because, like, no, you don't. Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. Star Wars feels at some points too Tatooine focus. Kind of like, I don't know, Dune is all about Arrakis. But, like, I don't know. There's so much more to the universe than Tatooine, and that's something, again, Star Wars and Clone Wars gets really into. It's like, I don't know why we only see so much. Like, why do these movies mostly just take place? Like, we only really see Naboo, Tatooine, and Coruscant in these movies, like, for the most part. Like,
and Tatooine's probably the most boring of all of them.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But so, I don't know. I don't really get it. It's weird. Like, I agree with you. Like, we don't need that scene of Jar Jar where he, like, steals the fish or whatever, and then, like, Zabulba, like, gets all pissed off about that. Like, what do we have that for? We don't need that.
It goes back into a whole Jar Jar Binks thing. Like, he feels like he was there for, like, the little kids watching this movie, like, who maybe had just seen, like, the little Ewoks TV show from the 80s or something like that.
They were bored by the politics, so they had to put in Jar Jar.
Just to keep their attention. It feels like, he's a 2020s TikTok-ified
right, yeah.
2-year-old.
Yeah, iPad kids. Jar Jar Binks was made for the iPad
exactly.
kids. George Lucas was truly ahead of his time.
He was.
Unless there's anything else. Is there anything else you want to talk about specifically?
I think I pretty much got out most of my thoughts about this movie. The only thing I would say is kind of like, why did this feel like 2 TV shows to me? I think the first episode was, up until the time that the Tatooine sequence finished, and then the second episode could have just been the rest of the movie. And
right.
I can't get over the feeling that, like, the execution of this movie was good. It was shot well, the music is good, and the idea also seems very good. I like the overall story beats and everything like that. But it doesn't feel cohesive, and it doesn't end up becoming greater than the sum of its parts. It's less than the sum of its parts.
Right. Yeah, and that's something I said to a lot of my friends, and now I'm going to say this too when I talk about Star Wars, is I sort of feel like George Lucas, he shouldn't have directed. I mean, you look at the original trilogy, he only directed A New Hope, and that was because, Star Wars wasn't like Star Wars yet. He didn't direct Empire Strikes Back, he didn't direct Return of the Jedi. And as much as we can shit on the Ewoks and Return of the Jedi, it's not Jar Jar Binks. And I don't know. I sort of feel like, looking back at the prequels, George Lucas was an idea man. And I think he should have stayed in as an idea man. I think he should have gone to a director and said, this is the story I want to tell. And then the director should have said, this is how we're going to tell the story. I sort of feel like he really needed that translator, and I think these movies would have come out much better if that's what happened.
The movie probably could have been like 45 minutes shorter.
Yeah.
It's crazy to say, because then it would actually be a pretty short film, and I'm okay with movies being shorter than longer. I don't think that they need to have unnecessary padding, and I think that there was a lot of scenes that you could just completely cut entirely and it wouldn't change a thing.
Right, yeah, oh, for sure. Or they could have just added, like, more backstory. Like, I was talking about this with you last night. I really do think Star Wars would benefit from an Episode 0, going into more of the founding of the Republic, the ending of the Jedi-Sith War, and sort of the Rule of Two emerging. I guess, what do you think of the Rule of Two real fast? What do you think of the whole Sith Rule of Two thing, now that we got introduced to that, speaking of?
I mean, it doesn't feel like it was explained all that much in this movie, to tell you the truth. I mean, made it pretty clear that the second one is Palpatine in this scenario, so who knows where that's going to go. But
yeah. I'm trying to remember how much they explain it in episodes 2 and 3. I don't think they really do. I don't think they really talk about it. But
it's just a thing that exists.
Yeah, basically, I mean, obviously you have, maybe you've heard this meme, have you heard of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? That feels like the most they've gone into in the Rule of Two, but the Rule of Two is basically this idea that there's only two Siths, a master and apprentice, and this is because, this is why an Episode 0 would be great. This is why Star Wars would benefit so much from an Episode 0, everything I'm about to say right now. Because the movie could explain this then, but basically after the end of the Jedi-Sith War, which happens 1,000 years before Episode 1, the Sith lost because there was a ton of infighting, because the Sith are just power hungry, that's who they are. And so one of the last remaining survivor, Darth Bane, he created this Rule of Two, which is basically there's only going to be two Siths, a master and an apprentice, and basically what happens is the Sith master trains a Sith apprentice, and then the Sith apprentice eventually grows so strong, because the Sith are all power hungry. That's their goal at the end of the day, right?
Right.
It's just more power. So then the apprentice eventually becomes strong enough to kill the master. And that's kind of the whole idea of it. That's how the Sith keep moving, is kind of just exponentially increasing, just kind of linearly increasing in power, and that's kind of how they stayed alive for the 1,000 years in between.
Interesting.
That. I forgot what I was talking about. Before I got into the Rule of Two. Now, I was basically going to say they could have used that extra time of not Jar Jar and not Zabulba and all that to actually explain on that shit more. But yeah, I don't know. I still think what I said is pretty accurate. I think Episode 1 is an enjoyable movie that could have been so much better. And I think you say that with the prequels a lot.
It's so much less than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
It should be really good, but it's just not.
Right, and that's why, listen, I love Star Wars, The Clone Wars, at least a lot of it. I mean, a lot of the episodes are very mixed, but, the prequels wouldn't have needed Star Wars, The Clone Wars to save it if they were just better movies themselves. I really liked Anakin's characterization in that much more than in the movies. And actually, you can see that because Hayden Christensen, who's the actor from Anakin episodes 2 and 3, he has come back as Anakin once or twice since then, and they sort of leaned into that Clone Wars representation more, and that's so much better. Basically, most of the problems I have with the prequels are done better in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and you know why that is? It's because they took the idea George Lucas had and they gave it to Dave Filoni. And Dave Filoni actually made it work, and he made it work really, 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 really well. So, I don't know. I stand by what I said. George Lucas, he was an artist who needed toning in, but I guess because he made Star Wars, no one, reining in, I guess, but no one wanted to actually rein him in.
That makes sense.
So, I think that's mostly everything we're going to talk about with this movie. So, Episode 2, it's called Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. What are you, having seen this one, what are you, expecting going to that movie?
I'm expecting 2 to be kind of about how Anakin kind of reaches out, or Palpatine reaches out to Anakin to kind of have Anakin's battle between good and bad, and then 3 is going to be about him really choosing to go over to the dark side. But I expect that the good guys are going to have a pretty bad time in these next couple movies, based on what we know about Episode 4 and how that starts and everything. Mm-hmm. But I'd say my expectations are actually quite low for 2 and 3, because part of what you said earlier about how 2 isn't a movie that really stands by itself.
Yeah.
And I think the best parts about this movie were the world building, and I think that's probably the most entertaining part of it. But doesn't seem like there's that much more world that's going to get built. If they're just staying on the same planets and the kind of stuff that's been explained is just what it is, like, I feel like the same things that were missing from episode 1 are going to be missing from 2 and 3, just without kind of the parts that made 1 so good.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where we go in episode 2, and there are 2 new planets that are introduced, but I'm trying to remember, like, how much of the world building you actually get. For one, I don't think, not Kashyyyk. I don't remember the name right now. With all the bugs, you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie.
Well, if you don't remember the name, that says enough.
Right, I was gonna say, I don't really think you get a ton of world building from that. The world building you get is from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And the other one, I can't really go into because it's kind of a very important part of the movie. But yeah, it feels like, I think it's like those 2 planets and then Coruscant. If I remember correctly, and a brief revisit to, of course, our favorite place, Tatooine. But yeah, so if you were to take a guess, one last thing, because I found it interesting that you talked mostly about Anakin and not really about like the Republic and the Empire. So how do you think, if you were to take a guess, random shot in the dark, how do you think the Republic is going to be converted into the Empire in these next 2 movies?
I feel that in one way or another, Anakin being the chosen one is going to be maybe even a bigger part of that transition than even Palpatine. Interesting.
Interesting. I'm not going to say anything more.
And I think it'll happen by force. I think it'll happen by force, not through diplomacy.
So, well, I was going to say you think Anakin kills Palpatine, but is that what you mean? Like, you think
No. I just mean, like, the current government and the current way that things are done. I think that there's going to be some kind of violence that's changing and forces it to kind of become like the dictatorship that it ends up becoming.
If you've seen those movies, you know how wrong or right that is. I don't want to say anything that would give anything away on how wrong or right you are.
Fair enough.
Because I don't want to ruin it. But all right. So finally, we're gonna wrap this up now. If you were to give a Phantom Menace a grade, and you could give it any sort of grade, like you use any sort of rating scale that you want. Obviously, I use more like good, mad, good, great kind of thing. Like, how would you rate this movie?
Cinematography, the score, all of that is probably easily a 10 out of 10.
Oh, John Williams. I said it before, where would Star Wars be without John Williams? I have no idea.
The dialogue I thought was pretty good. I thought that the way that the world was built was pretty good. I'd give that maybe like an 8.5 out of 10. Jar Jar Binks, he probably takes off a point or 2 by himself.
Negative 100.
He could take off more. But I can't shake the sense that something is missing, and I'd probably give this, somewhere around a C, a 7 out of 10, and I feel like that might be a little bit friendly.
Yeah, it's so weird thinking about this, before we start recording this segment, because I was leaning more towards like meh plus, good minus. But like it's so weird because the economy here is just so big, because part of my brain is going, oh, you love that opening sequence so much, like the Darth Maul fight is truly amazing. How could you give this movie how could you give them a movie like this that low? But then again, like all this Jar Jar Binks stuff, staying too long on Tatooine, everything like that makes me think meh plus is too high. So like I think it's honestly where it's gonna stay, because it feels very balanced. There's parts of this movie that are amazing, and there's parts of this movie that are terrible.
I can see why this is such a divisive movie.
Yeah, especially going from like, listen, I know Return of the Jedi can be a little divisive and have some problems, but it's not. Nothing makes me like want to hate myself. The Ewoks don't make me go like, why am I watching this movie? As annoying as they can be in episode 6. So, all right. With that, I mean, do you have anything else? Any final closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
That's about it. I hope I had something of insight, considering that I really don't know what I'm talking about. And have a good one.
Yeah. It's all right. So I just want to say, of course, thanks everyone for watching. Joe, you want to shout out your channel? What kind of videos can people find you on your channel?
Random stuff. Aviation videos, geography videos, whatever I kind of feel like making. you'll see it. It'll probably be something that you might or might not like.
Yeah, I think you could say that about basically everything. But all right, so just want to thanks everyone for watching. I'll put his channel in the description. Go check it out, please. Go show him some love. And yeah, look at this graph. Look at this graph. And I'm Alec, and this has been awesome. Do you have a special outro
I do
doing your
not.
videos? Okay.
I'm usually tired. I just got to the hotel after like a 12-hour flight, and I just want to have the video be over at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess in that spirit, it's over.